Hello everyone, Book of Alice here. Today we are going over the Mandela Effect iceberg. If you don't know what the Mandela Effect is, in its simplest form, it's basically a phenomenon where a large group of people remember something differently than how it actually occurred. Now, let me clarify this a little bit more. This all depends on the timeline you're living in, so how it actually occurred may all depend on the timeline you're experiencing. There's a lot of conflicting theories trying to explain this phenomenon, so I'll leave it up to you to decide which one makes more sense. The name Mandela Effect comes from the South African political activist Nelson Mandela, who a large group of people remember dying in prison in the 1980s, though in reality he was released from prison and later died in 2013, almost 2 decades later than what they originally thought, leaving them wondering what else had changed in their timeline. So without further ado, let's get into the Mandela Effect iceberg and see what it's got to offer. The Pillsbury Doughboy. Many people remember the Pillsbury Doughboy mascot having a blue scarf, but in our current timeline he has a white scarf. Even looking at old commercials of the guy, you can see that he has a white scarf on, and he always has. What is called residual evidence from our past timeline, which will be used a lot in this video, can be found online. It's basically evidence proving that at one point all these so-called misremembered things actually did in fact exist. As you can see, he does have a blue scarf on in these recreations of the character done in the past, even in this old Family Guy episode. Monopoly Man. Now, how do you remember the Monopoly Man? Does he have a suit on, a top hat, cane, and a monocle? Well, he's got all of those but one. He's never had a monocle. Though many people vividly remember him rocking a monocle, which would have gone along perfectly with his attire, in my opinion, he's never seen on any official merchandise with one. Some challenge this belief by saying that they're confusing him with the Peanuts character due to the similarities, but they stand their ground. What do you think? The Mona Lisa. Some people remember that the Mona Lisa was never smiling in the famous painting, but instead had a more serious facial expression. But this is wrong. She has always had a faint smile. Some try to explain this by saying that it all depends on your perspective, and that it was all done on purpose. But how do you remember it? Berenstain Bears. This one is by far one of the most popular ones that we're going to cover. A large majority of people think that the original spelling for the Berenstain Bears is the Berenstein Bears, with an E instead of the A. Is there any residual evidence for this one? Well, sorta. Some people claim to have copies and pictures of the book with Berenstein on it instead of Berenstain, but others say that it's most likely Photoshop or they made their own copies, falsifying evidence. But what do you remember it as? Berenstain or Berenstein? Leave it in the comments. Star Wars, famous line. We all know the famous movie quote from Star Wars, "Luke, I am your father," right? Well, that line didn't actually exist. The correct quote is, "No, I am your father," though most people swear that it has always started with Luke. The Looney Tunes logo. How do you guys remember the tunes and Looney Tunes being spelled? With double O's or a single U, like musical tunes? Well, it has always been spelled with a U, though lots of people remember it being spelled with double O's to fit the aesthetic of the cartoon theme, but this has never been the case. Fruit of the Loom. This entry is in reference to the Fruit of the Loom logo. Some people remember it, including a cornucopia, though it has never had one in the entire 170-year span of the company's existence. Strangely, it looks more complete with the cornucopia in the background. References to the brand in pop culture also depict the logo with a cornucopia, adding more to the mystery. Pikachu's tail. Some people remember Pikachu having a yellow tail with a black tip, although he's always had an all yellow tail with a brown beginning, and it has never changed on the original Pikachu. How do you remember it? Curious George. Do you guys recall Curious George having a tail? Well, a lot of people do, though he has never been officially seen with a tail. I gotta be honest though, I never remembered him like that, but let me know in the comments if you have. Let's move on to the Shallow Waters. Missing emoji. Does this emoji look familiar? Like you've used it before a long time ago but simply forgot about it? Well, it never existed. Same thing goes for the hiker emoji. Many people remember using this emoji to depict them working towards their goal or to just simply depict hiking. Either way, it has never existed in our reality, and emojis are extremely well documented, so if it would have existed at some points, it would have already been proved. This goes for many other emojis that people remember that have simply vanished. Jeffy Peanut Butter. Do you guys remember Jeffy Peanut Butter? Well, it's actually named Jeff, not Jeffy. Some claimed that it was simply confused for Skippy Peanut Butter, a completely different brand. Is there any residual evidence of Jeff being named Jeffy? Well, yeah. There are newspaper clippings with Jeffy Peanut Butter and other written evidence as well, but that's about it. What do you think? Is it Jeffy or Jeff? Ford logo. This is in reference to the little squiggly thing at the end of the letter F in the Ford logo. Many people remember it not being there, believing that it was later added, but it has been there since 1911. Some people find that it ruins the logo's aesthetic, but others don't mind it as much. How do you remember it? Febreze. Now this one got to me, I gotta admit. I've always remembered Febreze being spelled with 2 E's in the middle, but apparently it's just one. I always remember it being a mix of fabric and breeze put together, making Febreze with double E's, therefore putting the E's part in it, but I'm tripping. How do you guys remember it being spelled? Cause I swear it has always had 2 E's in the middle. It just looks correct to me that way, but what are your opinions on it? C-3PO's leg. Did you know that C-3PO had a silver right leg and that he was not entirely gold? Well, this surprised a lot of Mandela Effect followers, and a few Star Wars fans as well, who didn't pay much attention to the character's leg, though a large amount of figurines do depict him fully gold, so maybe this is where the misconception comes from, but I'm not sure. Tinkerbell Disney intro. Do you guys remember the intro for Disney films that depicts Tinkerbell writing out the logo and then tapping her wand? Well, that supposedly has happened before, but not in the way everyone has remembered. Here is an example of what it looked like. The Disney Castle logo would appear while Tinkerbell taps her wand over the letter I, pausing for a while and shooting off to the right. Some people believe that they may have confused it with an intro for the opening DVD screen, but others stand their ground in what they remember. Matrix quote. So in the movie Matrix, Morpheus shows Neo 2 pills, a blue and a red one. Near this scene, people recall Morpheus saying, "What if I told you everything you know is a lie?" But this line simply doesn't exist in the film, and is nowhere to be found in the script. Despite this, it became a rather popular quote, even appearing in viral memes online, like this one, being self-aware of the phenomenon. Judge Judy's gavel. Many people remember Judge Judy slamming her gavel when trying to get the attention of the court, although she has never had or used the gavel on the show. Do you remember it? We Are the Champions. You already know this hit song by Queen. It starts off mellow and slowly crescendos to the finale that kinda leaves you on a cliffhanger, cause you're expecting him to say, "of the world," after "We Are the Champions," but he simply doesn't. Even though this aspect of the song has appeared in numerous pop culture references in the media, it doesn't exist. The only time he says "of the world" is in a live performance of the song, but it doesn't appear on the hit mastered single. It kinda gives you an unsettling vibe when you first listen to the song and expect it to end a certain way, but it simply stops. Double stuff Oreos. I personally can't relate to this one as I don't have a big taste for the snack, but apparently people remember the double stuff Oreos being spelled with double F's, though this is not true as the packaging presents only a single letter F in the word stuff. How do you guys remember it? I Was a Teenage Gary deleted scene. I Was a Teenage Gary was an episode from the first season of SpongeBob. The episode involves Squidward neglecting to feed Gary when SpongeBob leaves town for the weekend. When SpongeBob returns, he sees that Gary is in bad shape, calling his veterinarian, who prescribes him snail plasma through the form of a syringe. Squidward is put in charge to inject Gary, but he accidentally injects SpongeBob instead, turning him into a snail, which has a whole nother creepy vibe to it as well. Later in the episode, Squidward accidentally injects himself with a syringe, and this is where the Mandela Effect comes in. Some people remember a scene depicting him transforming into a snail, similar to the scene when SpongeBob transforms into one, but this is simply not the case, as the scene awkwardly transitions to Squidward already in a snail form. No known copies of this supposedly deleted scene have ever surfaced online. Some people point out that the scene is noticeably altered due to the fact that they didn't use the bubble transition that they often use. Do you guys remember this scene? Laughing cow nose ring. This one is pretty self-explanatory. Do you guys remember the laughing cow with or without the nose ring? Well, the character doesn't and never had a nose ring. Instead, it's seen rocking some earrings, which is a bit strange to some Mandela Effect followers as well, as they remember the nose ring but don't recall the earrings. Let's move on to the depths. Scary movie line. In 2000, the horror comedy Scary Movie was released, spawning numerous sequels, though the first one remained a classic. Many people remember one scene in the film that parodied the "I see dead people" line in the movie The Sixth Sense, where actor Marlon Wayans says "I see white people," though this is untrue, as the real line is the exact same as the original movie, with him saying "I see dead people," and even the movie poster containing the original quote. Do any of you guys remember this missing scene? Let us know in the comments.
Can I tell you a secret?
Sure, man.
I see white people.
Man, this shit is awesome!
Rubik's Cube. This is a quick one. Some people remember Rubik's being spelled with an X instead of a KS at the end, though most say that this is just a mix-up based on its pronunciation sounding the same. Wizard of Oz gun. Wizard of Oz is a cinematic classic. Mostly everyone knows this film due to the memorable characters and the costumes worn by them. But did you know that the Scarecrow character had a gun? Well, tons of people don't remember this detail and believe that it was later added into the movie, just because it's so random and none of the characters ever brought attention to it, nor is it explained how he got the weapon. Though most people do recall him carrying Tin Man's oil can, but never a gun. Did this one surprise you guys, or do you guys recall differently? Mickey Mouse inconsistencies. How do you guys recall Mickey Mouse? Does he have regular pants and a tail? Well, some people remember him differently. They remember him wearing red overalls and having no tail. To be honest, I don't remember him with a tail either. And wouldn't it have been a hassle having to animate his tail all the time? Though it could be that I just don't remember it because it's so thin. And I wasn't an avid fan of the character either. Scouring the internet a bit more led me to this short animation of Mickey with suspenders on, which is how some remember him. I also came across some plushies with this design, but which do you remember? The Flintstones. This is one that I don't really understand, as I've always remembered it being named the Flintstones with a T at the end of Flynn, a reference to the hard gray rock, Flint. Though some remember it being the Flintstones without an extra T. What do you think? The Statue of Liberty. This is an iconic structure that lots of people immediately recognize at first glance, with millions paying her a visit each year. Tons of people remember having visited the top of the torch, even though access to the torch has been banned since 1916, more than 100 years ago. But this isn't the only Mandela Effect connected to the statue. People also remember it being on Ellis Island, although now, in this reality, it's on Liberty Island. Risky business scene. Most of y'all know the infamous scene in which Tom Cruise slides into frame only wearing shades, an oversized dress shirt, and socks, right? Well, there's something wrong about that memory. He never wore sunglasses in that scene. Even though mostly all reenactments of those scenes portray him wearing sunglasses, it's not accurate to the movie. So, are we all remembering it wrong? Or is this proof of a parallel universe? Well, some think that the reason we remember it that way is because he's seen wearing sunglasses throughout scenes in the movie, with the cover of the film even portraying him wearing shades. Beam me up, Scotty. Mostly everyone remembers this famous line, even if you're not a fan, though it has never been found anywhere in the show, the closest line to it being, "Scotty, beam me up." Could it be that it was simply reduced to this simple phrase because it's smoother? Or is there another explanation? Jigsaw line. Do you guys remember the famous quote from the franchise stating, "Would you like to play a game?" It's never said in the movie. Well, at least not in the form that we thought it was. It's, "I want to play a game." Either way, the first one wouldn't make much sense due to the fact that he's really not giving them a choice. Though there are a lot of memes with this exact quote. The Karate Kid headband. How do you guys remember the Karate Kid's headband? Did it have a red rising sun design or totally something else? Well, many people specifically remember him having the red rising sun design on his headband, although the movie says otherwise, where we see him rocking a black and white headband with a flower in the middle, and is never seen with a red rising sun. E.T. Phone Home. I remember this one vividly. E.T. points to the sky and says, "E.T. phone home," right? Well, no, he actually says E.T. home phone, like a landline phone provider company. This one tripped a lot of people up, as they clearly recall him pointing to the sky and saying E.T. phone home. This one's a bit confusing though, as he does say phone home for the majority of the scene, and only chooses to say home phone for the specific scene where he points to the sky, which may be the reason why so many people remember this being said so clearly. But what do you recall? Let's move on to the abyss. OxyClean. How do you guys remember oxy being spelled? With an I or a Y at the end of ox? Well, many people remember it being spelled with a Y and don't remember there being an I at the end of the first word. Disney's Ratatouille, new scene. Do you guys remember a scene in the G-rated film Ratatouille, including domestic abuse, a gun, and a makeout scene? If you said no, then you're wrong, because it does exist. Take a look. Tons of people are surprised that this scene exists in the film, puzzled as to why they would let this into a G-rated movie, meant for all ages, even including toddlers. And the gun isn't even used as a prop either, it's actually shot and almost kills Remy, which would have been pretty gruesome for a kids film. Do any of you guys remember this scene? George Bush, second plane on 9/11. On the day of September 11th, 2001, George Bush sat in Bricker Elementary School, surrounded by children for nearly 7 minutes during the attacks, calmly reading a book, which later attracted lots of criticism from the public due to his lack of reaction, though some remember him dramatically leaving halfway, just before the second plane. Some recall a speech George Bush gave where he recalls watching the second plane hitting the World Trade Center on live television, though history says otherwise, as he's videotaped staying in the classroom for the entirety of the time both of the attacks had happened. Frosty the Snowman's scarf. How do you guys remember Frosty the Snowman? A pipe, top hat, and red scarf, right? Well, one of those are wrong. He's never shown with a red scarf in the animated series. Residue in the form of books can be seen online, depicting Frosty with a red scarf, which I personally think looks better on him. JFK 4-seater. Many people remember watching JFK being assassinated in a 4-seat car, with only him, his wife, and his drivers, and JFK being the only casualty on scene. Though this wasn't the case, the video depicts a 6-seat car with Governor Connolly and his wife in the middle. He wasn't the only casualty either, as Governor Connolly suffered a fracture of the 5th rib, a punctured lung, and a shattered wrist, and also had a bullet stuck in his leg, though some used the replica at the Historic Auto Attractions Museum as evidence of residue because it's only a 4-seat car. Human anatomy. What side of your chest is your heart located on? Left or right? Well, neither is 100% correct, as it lies in the front and middle of your chest, behind and slightly to the left of your breastbone. This is mind-boggling to some, as they remember it specifically being directly under the left side of your chest, though this may be confused for the Pledge of Allegiance trick for us Americans, which taught us to put our hand on our hearts, being the left part of our chest. But how do you remember it? Yesterday, Paul McCartney. This one is a personal Mandela Effect, not personal to me but to Paul McCartney, involving the hit classic titled Yesterday, which I love. Paul remembers listening to the melody of the song before and hearing it in his dreams, believing that it was one of his dad's old jazz tunes that was just stuck in his head, but it turned out to be an original melody that hadn't existed before. He remembers playing it on the piano for his friends to see if they had heard it before, but they couldn't recall anything similar to the tune. Earth's location. A large group of people remember our place in the galaxy being in a Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way, but it's actually in the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy. Here is some residue found in a listen from famous American astronomer Carl Sagan.
And if we did look down the Milky Way galaxy, where would the sun and nearby stars be? Would it be in the center where things look important or at least well lit? No. We would be way out here in the suburbs, in the countryside of the galaxy. We're not in any important place.
Someone found that if you used the Wayback Machine on NASA's official website, it used to say that we lived in the Sagittarius arm of the galaxy, but now it says that we live in the Orion arm, presenting no footnote saying that it's an update or correction. It's simply different now.